Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Poison Pen, and welcome to the book launch, the virtual book launch, for Sandra Brown and her new novel, Thick as Thieves. I really love a heist, so this is going to be a lot of fun to talk about it. Sandra is the author of 71 New York Times bestsellers. Oh my Lord, really? 71?
71.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There are more than 80 million copies of her books in print worldwide, and her work has been translated into 34 languages. She's been a thriller master for ITW, a president of Mystery Writers of America, and holds an honorary doctorate of humane letters from Texas Christian University. So joining us tonight is Linda Castillo, who started as a romance writer. I probably shouldn't bring that up tonight, but I can't ever resist it. And has become the, again, best-selling author of a wonderful series set in Amish country with a police chief, Kate. I'm addicted to them. I feel lucky that we have walked your entire path with Kate together, haven't we, Linda? It's been...
Yes.
And we've been fortunate to debut Linda so many times, in fact, as we did in July. So Sandra has autographed Thick as Thieves. We have autographed copies here for you to buy. And we still have a few copies of Linda's most recent book for Kate Burkholder called Outsider. Now that I've done the commercial, I'm going to turn this over to Linda Castillo. Thank you so much, ladies.
Barbara, thank you. I am absolutely honored to be here. Barbara, I'm a big fan of you. Love everybody at Poison Pen, and of course, Sandra Brown. I have just been a fan for many, many years. I won't say how many years, but since very early in your career. I love your writing, love your books. When Barbara was introducing you, 80 million copies of your books in circulation was one of the things that I read about you today. 71 New York Times bestsellers. 80 novels. I think it would be an understatement for me to say that that's amazing. And I really just have an honest question. How do you do it? How do you keep the momentum going? How do you keep doing something that putting out these thrilling and magical books?
Well, thank you, Linda, first of all, for your comments. I'm humbled by them. But I look at those figures, I hear those figures, and I go, but they're not referring to me, because I consider myself a yeoman. I mean, I come to work every day. I work in this tiny space that I had to make room for the lights and this Facebook chat, but it really I'm in shock and awe by the numbers, because I just love what I do. So coming to work every day, sometimes it's torturous, sometimes it's blissful, but I look at the yield of that and I'm going, really? They're talking about me? I mean, it's astonishing to me too, and I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed by the longevity to be able to have done what I love to do for as long as I've been able to do it, and still maintain a viability in the marketplace is just, it's astounding to me.
Yeah, totally understand. It seems impossible. And of course it's every novelist's dream, but it seems like every single book that you write is better than the one before it.
Oh, well, that's a good compliment. Thank you.
I always feel, when we're writing books that, sometimes we feel that not every book is a home run, but I think maybe sometimes that's because sometimes writers tend to be a little bit harder on ourselves. And, of course, I'm a big fan of yours, and you just hit. It just seems like every book has been a home run, and I absolutely loved Thick as Thieves.
Thank you. That's so kind of you to say, because as you know, as a best-selling author, I think you can get caught up in the PR, and if you start believing the PR, then you're sunk, in my opinion.
Yeah.
My opinion is that you have to go out of the gate every time as though this is the first time you've ever done it. And
Yeah.
that's the way I feel. I come to work every morning, I sit at this keyboard, I look at that blank page and that blinking cursor, and in this case, blinking is usually an obscenity, but that blinking cursor, and think, I don't know how to do this. This is the first time I've ever done this. I'll never produce a sentence, much less a plot, much less characters that readers want to read about. And I'll look at that bookshelf full of books and I go, I don't even know that many words. How did I do that? So to me, every single day, I have to scale this wall of fear, absolute fear, that whatever talent I had, or whatever talent that I fooled people into thinking that I had, has left me. The bad fairies came in the night and stole it all away, and I'm going to be exposed as this huge imposter. And in a way, and forgive me if I'm talking too long, but in a way, I think that fear is a healthy thing. I think it's the fear factor that makes me strive to be better, that each book has to make a statement on its own, that all the other 80 before that didn't count. This is the one that counts. And
right.
So, and I came from a very, nobody asked me this, but I came from a very humble, in terms of socioeconomic background, my grandparents, my parents, and the work ethic was so instilled in me. And I think I would feel like I were cheating my readers and my fans and the people who put down their hard-earned money for me if I didn't do my level best to deliver. And so that work ethic was instilled in me, and so I still go to work every day. It's toil, as you know. It's also, you have to love it. You absolutely have to love it. And having said all of that, I've got the best job in the world. I really do. I've been incredibly blessed by that. Being able to make a living at something that I love to do.
Yes. I have to tell you, that is such a courageous answer, because I think with a lot of writers, I think there is a certain level of fear. And I can remember many times, maybe with almost every book, when I start the book, I think to myself, I am never going to pull this off, and I will be revealed as not a real writer somehow. But on the good side of that, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but the definition of courage is when you're afraid to do something and you do it anyway. And I think that's your answer is just the best answer I think I've ever heard.
Well, I think
that's true.
I feel like it is a healthy motivator. It truly is. That fear that can I pull this off? And I don't know if you do this. With each book, I try to do one thing different that I've never done before. And it's like I build it in, and it's almost like a subconscious thing, but then I think, oh gosh, this is going to be tough, and I sit back and I look at it and I think, but this is the thing. If I can pull this off, then it's kind of an affirmation. Maybe I haven't lost it. Maybe there's something still there. And so I try something, I build something into each book that's a little bit different from something I've done before. And that way it keeps me on my toes, but I also think it keeps my readers and my fans from becoming ho-hum, from becoming, oh, it's another Sandra Brown. I know what to expect. At some point in time, my publisher did this tag that I loved, and it was expect the unexpected. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was one of the best advertising lines, because if you should expect anything from a novelist, it's the unexpected. And I thought that was a great term. So I try to build in something totally unexpected, something I haven't done before.
Something like a plot point or a character trait.
Or just the structure of the story, or how I reveal information. Revealing information to me is one of the hardest aspects of our job. Don't you agree? Because
I absolutely agree. Yes. How much and when do you reveal it? How do you reveal it? How is the best way to reveal it?
You've got to get all that crap in there. I already know it. So I'm not entertained by it. But the reader, I have to keep reminding myself that the reader doesn't know it. You know this, but the reader has to let it. And so I try to reveal it in tidbits, not all at one time. And I think this is for all of you out there, hello, who may be aspiring to write. One of the initial downfalls, I think, and myself included, of a novice writer is that they try to tell everything up front. They feel like they have to fill their reader in on all this background stuff.
Yes.
Actually, get into the story. Reveal your characters. Introduce their terrible trouble. Get them on their path. And incrementally, you can drop this in. So you fill in all those blanks, but you do it in another way, or you do it subtly as you go along. And so anyone out there aspiring to write, I would say, don't feel like you have to let your reader in on everything immediately.
Yeah.
Feed it to them, in little doses.
Yes, I've heard it put when I was actually going to a workshop, that if you think of your characters and you think of your plot as an onion, and you peel away the information one layer at a time, and just do it slowly. That's sort of one of the things that Thick as Thieves. It's one of those books. Speaking of information, you have to know what happens next. And to me, that is just the down and dirty of a novel. When you have to know what happens next, you can't stop. Dinner's burning on the stove, your clothes have been dry 3 hours, and something's burning, and you're just like, and that was the way I felt when I read the book.
Oh, well, thank you. I have to tell you this kind of sidebar. People ask, where do your ideas come from? If I knew that, that's what I would sell. I wouldn't have to write the books. I would just sell that. That would be far more valuable. But this idea I was sitting in my office all alone doing something totally unrelated, and I heard the first word of dialogue in the book, and it's in the prologue.
And I know what that is.
Talking about it is the surefire way to get caught. And I looked around my office like, who said that? And of course I was cloned, but I was immediately thrust into this scene. And I thought, who? And then people started talking. I could smell the manure in the pasture. I could, all of this stuff. So I just started writing it down. And after about 6 or 7 pages, I thought, this is a good prologue. So I sent it to my editor. I said, I'm shooting you an email. So he read it and he said, I love it. What happens? I said, I have no idea. Earthly clue what was going to come next. And I said, I've only got 450 pages to go, so.
Yeah, exactly.
I told him something. but it's when you get one of those moments that it's just like you're there in the scene and you've got to write it down before it leaves you. And
Yeah.
so when, I wish I could give this real thoughtful, academic answer to where the ideas come from. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know where they come from. I just heard that sentence, and I wrote it down, and then it led to the prologue, and I still didn't have the story. Had no idea what the story was going to be, but it was a good jumping off spot.
Yes, it absolutely was one hell of a prologue. You knew that there was a big story there, and that sort of brings me to my next question. I always love your heroines. A hero is coming next. Arlen Maxwell. She's a strong woman. Has some things going on in her past, and she's also got a pretty strong vulnerability going on. And I'm sort of wondering how did you build her? How did you turn her into the heroine that took us through this book?
Well, in some ways I disagree with you, because when Arden started out, she wasn't very strong. I didn't think. I was like, come on, get it together. And I think that's what her epiphany was. That after the tragic event that occurs, in the first chapter of the book, and we hear about it, that was her wake-up call. It was like, I thought I had this all planned out. But it's when she came to the realization that I can't go on with the rest of my life until I resolve this pivotal point in my life that everything is still revolving around. I've got to get to that. And that's where she started getting strong. Yeah. That's where I ended the chapter, or the scene, with her saying to her sister, "Are you finished? If so, leave. If not, leave anyway." And that was the point, because up to that point, you're kind of like, what is she? She doesn't really stick with a career. She's got all, she's dealing with all this stuff, but she has allowed that to completely stonewall her, completely block the rest of her life. And only when she comes to the realization, I can't move forward until I deal with this and I get some kind of resolution, even if it's just an emotional acceptance. But that was her calling. I don't know if you're familiar with the book. It's a great book for writers. It's called A Writer's Journey. Yeah. It's written by a man, Christopher Rogan. And I mean, it's my Bible. I mean, every time I start a book, I go back and read it, and it's like, what's the call to action? Well, that was Arden's call to action. It's like, get off this, you're stuck in neutral. Get off of that. Go after the answers for these questions that you've had for 20 years. Right. And so that was her call to action. So I'm glad that you think that by the end of the book, she has become the woman she should have been all along, but she had to overcome a lot of stuff. And but thank you for thinking that she did come along, because she needed.
We got to see her, grow. We got to see you created her early in the book. We left a lot of room for growth, personal growth, and character growth. And I think that was also really, really smart. And
both somebody I did a radio tour earlier today, and a satellite tour, and someone that interviewed me brought out the fact, and I hadn't really thought about it, but he or she said, Arden and Ledge are very much alike in some respects because they're both kind of stuck in what happened that night 20 years ago.
Right.
And for Ledge, it was, a reckoning, of course, with Rusty, the villain, y'all, the villain. But it was also, he had to expunge that. He had to own up. He had to resolve it in his way. So each of them, even though he continues to lie throughout the entire book, each in his own way, they had to reconcile that night and what it meant to their life before they could go forward with the rest of their life. Right.
And Ledge was also, it seems like even early on, he was, we knew there was goodness. We knew that he had a lot of secrets, and he was kind of an edgy guy, but we knew.
And I didn't mean that to rhyme.
Oh. Edge. But we also knew, because of something that happened, I don't want to give it away, but we knew he had goodness in his heart.
Yes.
And even if, we didn't get that right away, we knew that he was a redeemable character.
Right.
And I love that. He was sort of a classic bad boy. And, you did it perfectly. You sort of peeled away the different, layers a little bit at a time. We didn't know him going in. And you surprised us a few times with him. And
well, I thought about titling it Honor Among Thieves, because I thought of, Ledge really has a code of honor. He's extremely loyal to the people that he cares about. And he does have goodness, and he is a sinner, but he's seeking redemption. Yeah. And for that reason, I think he did come out heroic, although he did some very mean things. Even during, the course of the book, you're like, where's this guy going with this?
Yeah.
But even if he did the wrong thing, he was doing it for the right reason. And I think that's the redemptive quality in a hero. And I think, if your hero, a Sandra Brown hero, it kind of has to be that edgy, kind of troubled, or trying to figure out something inside himself. And it's that up to the heroine to find that kernel of honor in him and bring it out.
And you revealed all of that perfectly.
Oh, thank you.
He was just a great hero. And also early on, and again, I don't want to give away too much, but he was also, when the big thing happened 20 years ago, he was also very young. He was like 17 years old, or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, that plays a little bit, not everybody has the best mature judgment when they're 17 years old. So that, is one of the things also that makes him redeemable.
And his unorthodox upbringing, and yet he never resented that. In fact, he embraced it. He loved it.
Another
character that kind of surprised me, and we're all schizophrenic. My character it was Crystal. When I pitched the idea, after I figured out after the prologue, I worked on it for another 2 weeks. I thought, I kind of have a plot here. Talked to my editor again, and I said, and then another source of conflict between Ledge and the villain, Rusty, is this hot ticket. She's the woman with the past. She's the rode hard and put up wet. Kind of, brassy, blousy. And when I introduced Crystal, it was almost like she turned around to me and winked. It was almost like, I fooled you. that's not at all me. I didn't know her background until Ledge started relating the story about their background and how their friendship was forged. And I was like going, this is so much better.
Yeah,
That's why I always say that the characters are smarter than I am.
Yes. And I love it when that is when spontaneous things like that happen. I think they happen for a reason, and I think they're just very honest, and they always make, you're trying to follow a synopsis and then your characters take you on a big left-hand turn. I think sometimes that's a really good thing, and in this case it was. Yeah.
Because
sure.
I had no idea about any of that until that first scene with her and Ledge together. And then all this stuff started coming out. I thought, I didn't think of this. They knew this, but I didn't even know this. So, well, don't believe that, but it's the truth.
Well, one of the things that I found very interesting, it was a piece that she wrote. I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but it was the theme of the book, and your sins will find you out. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. How did you take the theme of this book and just condense it into that phrase?
Again, I think Linda, so much of this happens on it's not that I consciously think of it. It's because I didn't consciously think to write a book about that. Right. It's, as I say, the characters are smarter than I am. I wonder what they're up to when I'm not with them, because it's like, what are they talking about? What are they doing while I'm not there? Because I think the story is there. I don't think of myself so much as creating it as excavating it.
Okay, yeah.
The story is there. And so it was, sins will find you out. And I think that telling the two stories, the challenge for me, once I figured out, okay, this prologue, the hero, I thought, if he's a recent, it has to be in the past. So that's why I moved the action forward 20 years, so that all of these people could mature.
Right.
But again, I didn't plan that. That was just the way it had to work out. But I didn't consciously set out to make that the theme of the book. But it was a story of, okay, what happened, and they got away with it, but they really didn't. They're still having to face the consequences of their actions. Right. And there's no real moral. I didn't set out to write a morality tale or anything. But the thing is that they learned, they acknowledged, and then they could move on until they had that acknowledgement. And I think personal accountability might have come into my mind, because I think people should be held personally accountable for their actions. Right. And whether it's your pet or whether it's your child or whatever, but I think there's not as much of that as there should be, and people should be held personally accountable for the choices they make. And in this, there were severe consequences, especially for Ledge, and he had to acknowledge it, So, but I set out to write that. It just, kind of evolved.
I think it's just kind of the magic that sometimes happens accidentally on the page while you're.
If you're very, very fortunate. If you're very, very fortunate. And another theme that someone said one time, and I wasn't smart enough to think about this. I was just writing stories, but some interviewer at one point said, the theme of most of your books is the abuse of power. And I go, really? And I got to thinking about it, and it was like, whether it was a public official, a preacher, a teacher, a parent, a friend, in envy. It was the power of one friend over another, but the abuse of that power. And so I think that the hypocrisy of it must really grate inside Sandra Brown somewhere. It's, it kind of is thematic, and in this case of Rusty,
Yeah.
he's the champion manipulator, the champion seductor. And so I guess that kind of plays out in all my books, is that, it's the hypocrisy that really bothers me.
Yeah. One of the other things that I just wanted to touch on is one of the things that you always do, no matter where you set your book, you nail the setting. It's Cato Lake, right?
Yeah.
You got right, Cato Lake. I have not been that far. I've been to Shreveport, but I've not been to that particular lake. There's another smaller lake over in that area, but those, the cypress trees, dark murky water. It's almost one of the most sort of exotic places.
Mystical. It's mystical.
Right.
And ethereal. And when I started conceiving what the story was going to be, after that prologue, I thought, where can I set this? And Caddo Lake came to mind because it's so steeped in Texas folklore. They were saying that during Prohibition, there was at least a body a day that was dumped in the lake. So I mean, it has a lot of folklore surrounding it. The Bigfoot that is reputed to live there. Panthers that haunt the forest, that are very elusive, that have only been photographed a few times. So I did my research, but I have been there, and it's not what one conjures up. You conjure Texas, you think John Wayne movies,
right?
But this is totally different. It's much more like Louisiana than it is Texas, even though the state line bisects the lake.
Right.
But it is the kind of place that if I were going to hide a body, that's probably where I would do it.
That lake has definitely got some skeletons somewhere on the bottom of all of the sludge.
First of all, nobody would want to go look for it. So
I love that setting, and I thought it was really perfect. It's almost like that's the kind of lake that has secrets. And I just thought it's almost like the lake itself, that whole area of Texas has sort of and I loved it. Did you travel to the lake while you were writing the book, or
no? I had been there before, and I did a lot of research just online, looking at pictures and everything. And to their credit, my publisher, Grand Central, did a fantastic job of portraying the lake. But I have to tell you, I sent them pictures. I said, you don't have to ask me what it's like. I said, go online. There's thousands of pictures. And they were like, oh my gosh, it's just the way you described it. I said, it's mysterious. It's shrouded in mystery. And so I thought it would be, the perfect setting for this book. But I've kind of, this because of the books that you write about the Amish country, but your setting really should be, I think, another character in the book. It should have as much influence. It should have as much staying power as the characters. That
totally agree with that.
It is essential to the story.
That the story would not be nearly as powerful without the presence of that setting. Even though it's sort of in the background, we know it's there. We sort of have a feeling about that setting. I mean, it was very subtle, but we had a feeling of secrets and darkness and murky water and tree root going down into the dark water, and it was just perfect for the story.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So may I ask a question, ladies?
Yes, please.
One of the reasons that I thought this would be really fun to do the two of you together, aside from Linda being a fangirl, is that the structure was inherently going to be different in the sense that Thick as Thieves tells us that it is going to be a novel where part of the question is who gets away with what or who doesn't get away with what, right? I like your idea of the thing about this. Whereas Linda writes police procedurals, and that's a different structure. And again, though, that same line, you know, your sins will find you out, really applies to the woman who brings trouble to Painter's Mill, and the people behind her. So there's, but I love the idea that a police investigation, which has a particular structure, I often think, although Linda's good at dealing with it in different aspects, which makes her book so much fun to read, is going to be different than your book, which from the title, because when I set this up, of course, I hadn't had a chance to read it, but I intuited that it was going to be more like a heist novel or a caper, which is actually, Sandra, a rarer form of crime fiction. You don't see as many heist or capers. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, think of the movie The Sting. It's a wonderful example of this kind of a book. Thomas Perry writes books like this. It's really about pieces sort of all over and who gets away with what and who pays the price for what happens. I think would be fair.
Yeah.
So I thought that the contrast here would be really interesting, and now that I read both the books, I'm right. Great. So I'm going to ask Patrick, do we have any questions that you'd like to whip over here and ask before we carry on?
Absolutely.
Here comes Patrick at warp speed.
Good.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Hi, Patrick.
Hi. Let's see. Okay, Stephanie asks, for either of you, do you shoot for a certain amount of words each day, or do you have a, you know, something like, do you write for a particular amount of time each day? What's your process like?
Well, when I write, I usually shoot for 4 or 5 pages per day. And I look at writing sort of as, you know, I've always worked full time. I usually am behind my computer first thing in the morning and usually work on the book. If I can get 4 or 5 pages finished, I may spend a little bit of time on social media or whatnot, and then I'm done for the day. And you know, I'm on an annual schedule. I'm putting out a book a year. And you know, it takes a good, you know, a good 10, 11, sometimes 12 months to write a book. Because, you know, I walked into the house the other day and I told my husband, well, I wrote 2 pages and I deleted 2 pages. So, you know, it doesn't always work. You don't always keep what you have. But Sandra, I'm very interested in your process as well. So.
My process has kind of evolved over as many years as I've been doing it. When I started, my children were young. They weren't even in preschool. And so I had to work between being peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you know, and putting laundry in the washer and so on. But then when they both got in school, and then I wrote like a frenzy from 8:30 to 3:30, then I had to become the soccer mom, the ballet mom, the choir mom, you know, all of this. And so it has evolved. I do have an office outside of the house, and I go to work every day like everybody else, and I do maybe 4 or 5 hours of solid writing. The rest of it is business. And you know, Linda, one of the consequences, and it's a blessing, but it's also a consequence of having a successful career, is that you have to deal with the business. And I hate that part of it, actually. I'd much rather be in there playing with my imaginary friends. So I try to write 4 or 5 hours a day. I used to be a little bit harder on myself than I am now. I used to say, okay, it's got to be, 8 pages a day. Now I don't do that. If I feel good about what I've done, and I usually leave a scene before I finish it, so that I have a place to come back to the next day. So if I'm at the end of a scene and I know what the next 2 or 3 paragraphs are going to be, I just leave it, shut it down, and then the next day when I go back, I have a starting point.
Right.
And then 2 or 3 times a year, I completely check out of my life, because even though my children are grown, my grandchildren are almost grown, but we have a very social life and busy life, but I go away. I shut down. It's pajama bottoms and tops every day. I don't do anything except write. No appointments, no social life.
We used to call it refilling the well.
Yeah.
It's sort of, you work and you use a lot of creativity, and sometimes it's good. I think it's very important for a writer, even a prolific writer who spends a lot of time writing, to spend some time refilling the well. I think that's really, really smart.
Yeah. But I think you and I both know you have to love this. It's too hard to do. You couldn't do it if you didn't absolutely love it. And I have people say, would you ever consider retiring? And I'm like, to do what? What would I do with myself? I don't like anything more than I like writing. So what would I do? I can't envision my life without it.
Yeah.
And when THICK as Thieves was ending, COVID was setting in. And so I had no choice but to kind of, stay landlocked for the next 3 months. And I did a lot of reading. I just feasted on books because, reading is now such a luxury. It's my end of day entertainment. Yeah. And I read so much. And you talk about refueling. Even that, is like a refueling. Yes. And then I started getting antsy, it was like, gosh, I really feel like, I've got all this time, nothing else to do, can't go anywhere. I really would like to start another book. So I'm already, plotting next year's project, because I have the best job in the world. We have the best job in the world.
Another question?
Yeah. That actually kind of relates to a question that's been asked here, which is for Sandra. Do you start with a character or a plot idea?
Oh, great question.
Patrick and whoever asked the question, thank you for the question, first of all. But I wish I could tell you. And for each book, there's a different way in which the idea came. This one came with me just being thrust into a scene, and the character of Ledge came out of that scene. If you've read the prologue, I knew that the teenage boy who ground the mosquito against his neck and left a blood smear, I knew that was going to be Ledge. I knew that was going to be my hero. I didn't even know his name at the time. Other times, for instance, Tailspin started with a character. I heard about freight dogs, and I wanted to write a book about a freight dog, so I invented that character. Other times it comes from just something I hear, or the truth of the matter is I don't know where the idea comes from. It's just there, and I know when an idea wants to be a story. And this is important for all of you aspiring writers out there. Some ideas do not want to become a story. And I've had great ideas that just lay there and never went anywhere. For me, I know it wants to be a story when I get the aha. And that's the one thing that I know that the reader doesn't know. And it's when I get that one thing It's like, that's why I would want to write the book. It's that thread that's there the whole time, but it's not revealed until the very end of the book. But it's the thing that everything else is hanging on.
Yeah.
And so it's the and when I have that, then I know that the idea wants to be a story.
Okay, I have a question here from Beth, who is asking about the character names in your books. This is addressed towards Sandra, but I'd like to hear what Linda has to say too about how do you come up with character names. Is there any weird algorithm?
Linda, you can answer. Did you?
Well,
since of course you've got the recurring characters, so
I do, and I'm a little bit hemmed in when it comes to the name situation, and that's mainly because my books are set in Amish country, and different parts of the United States. If you take Ohio, for example, versus upstate New York or Indiana or Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, there are common Amish both first and last names, and so I'm quite a bit hemmed in when it comes to naming my Amish characters. And of course, I can do all sorts of combinations of name. Miller is very, very, very popular. The mailman has a terrible time in Millersburg, Ohio, because there are so many Millers. He differentiates some of the Millers by their nicknames. If there's a one-arm Miller, or who knows what his nickname would be. But as far as the other characters, usually one of the things that I do is, first of all, I don't want it to be an Amish name if I'm writing an English character. And Sandra, you probably get this same feeling. Sometimes when a name fits a character.
Yeah.
There are times when I'm absolutely frozen because I have not come up with the name for this character. Certain names have certain meanings, or they mean certain things, and it's difficult to explain. But I have to have the right names, or I can't go too far without the right name.
I identify with that totally, and sometimes I can assign a name, and I'll get 3 chapters in and go, my character doesn't like his name, or my character doesn't like her name. But I live in Texas, so
Oh yeah.
but I look at the phone book, the baptism program, and from our church. I have my grandsons collect their class rosters. I go to their baseball games. I'll see a name I like, I write it down. I have friends who collect names for me. It's so true how personal it is. And I've gotten chapters into a book and decided this is not the right name for this character, and they're resisting it, and you feel it automatically. But I want it to be an attractive and appealing name. I don't want it to be too weird. I don't want it to be too long, because I don't want to type that many times. But the character names have to fit the character.
They do, and the Texas, there are some names that I think are only in Texas. I mean, I'm thinking about, I have, some neighbors, names like Ridge, and then I got, Ledge, and there are just names that are very, very, they have a Texas sound to them. And you're very good at.
One of the best sources I ever found was the monument at the Alamo. Fantastic names, because they were either Hispanic, all of the Hispanic heroes at the Alamo, or they came from like Tennessee, Kentucky, so they were Deep South names, and family names that were used as first or middle names. So that was a great resource of names. And we spend a lot of time in the Carolinas, and the Deep South, they always name you know, their children after their relatives, you know. So you have fabulous names there. So I collect names, and if I hear one, I write it down, and it might not be right for the character that I'm working on, but it might be right for a next one.
At some point, it is going to be the right name.
Yeah.
Okay, this is actually a related question, and it deals with book titles. How many book titles have you come up with that the publisher has let you keep? And are there any titles that you're not happy with now? It's a toughie.
Yeah, titles are hard, except when they're right there at the right time. When I wrote the prologue for Thick as Thieves, I immediately had the title. I mean, I thought about Honor Among Thieves, but Thick as Thieves, I loved the alliteration. I loved the way it was going to look on the cover. And because Outfox went in without a title, and they were going to print, and it was like, you know, Sandra, we can't print it as Untitled Sandra Brown. We really have a title. And so that was a toughie. But I remember Envy. When I wrote Envy came to me immediately when I got the idea. And so some are easy, and then some are just like pulling teeth. And yeah, there are some that I wish I could go back and retitle, because I didn't think they were the strongest one for the book.
Yeah. I write for St. Martin's Press, and I have to say, you know, they always, the team at Minotaur Books, they always ask feedback. And, you know, I cannot think of a single title that I've had in the Kate Burkholder series that I've not, you know, maybe there's a couple that I haven't loved, but I have liked all of them. I came up with the Sworn to Silence, the title of the first book, and there are many that I came up with. But I always try to keep an open mind and see what what they're thinking. And there have been a few times when I've had my mind set on a title, they've come up with something better. It doesn't happen very often, but it has happened once or twice.
Mm. Well, you don't want the marketing people to hate your title.
Yeah,
that's right. For sure. You want them to go out with it and say, "Ooh, I love that," you know. But to me, a title is like a visceral reaction. You know, you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel like this is what I'm trying to say with this title.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I've gone to like Word Power or these reference books that I have their synonyms and things, because I know what I'm trying to say, but I just can't find the word. And so, but typically, I eventually pull it out. I did submit one title that came back on me. It was Hellbent, and I thought that was a great title for the book.
Yeah.
And they were like, some of the accounts would frown on the word hell being in the title. But Hellbent is like a word. It's like, it's not. And they said, yeah, and so I had to give that one up. But it was still everything that has my name in the big white letters on the cover has to be mine. I can't take anybody else's input.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add a comment. Patrick did a wonderful event with James Lee Burke last Friday, and I think that James Lee Burke has my favorite and completely unexpected title ever that he got away with, which is called "In the Electric Mist of the Confederate Dead." And I've often wondered how he managed to get that title approved by his publisher, because don't you think, Patrick, it's just, I mean, is that a title that you would ever imagine a publisher would embrace?
And Barbara, I think they actually made that novel, they adapted that into a movie, I'm pretty sure, with Tommy Lee Jones.
I think so too. But I've always really admired both the publisher's fortitude and Jim's imagination in order to get that title out there. It hardly fits on a book jacket. It's so long, but but they did.
Yeah.
All right, Patrick?
Let's see. Sharon asks, when you first started writing, what author or authors did you look up to, and did you ever get to meet them?
Are you asking me?
Well, I'm asking both of you. I think we know the answer for Linda, but
Well, it's easy for me. I have to tell you, I was a very determined young writer, and I think that's one of those times where I've been told that I have a hard head, and I think when you're a young writer and you're unpublished, that you need that, and you have to have an outer shell, and you have to have a hard head, and I did. And I can tell you, Sandra Brown, that you are one of the authors that I read, or just early on, and I was inspired. Tammy Hope, Nora Roberts was another one, John Sanford.
Good one.
Those, you guys, those were the books that I devoured, and I thought to myself, that is what I love, and that's what I want to do.
Right. Well, thank you. I read, I didn't get to ever meet Taylor Caldwell, but I read a lot of Taylor Caldwell, and I loved her books. I never got to meet Tennessee Williams, but he influenced my writing in terms of the southernness of his books. Evelyn Anthony, I never got to meet. Helen McGinnis, all of those English women who wrote the espionage, romantic suspense. I devoured those when I was like in junior high, high school, and I never got to meet them. But two writers really stand out. One is Dean Koontz. He wrote under a pseudonym, Lee Nichols, and and he wrote 2 or 3 what I would call romantic suspense novels. And I didn't know it was a man who wrote these until years later, and a bookstore owner said, well, that's Dean Koontz. And I said, no, I didn't know that. But I did get to meet him. This goes back early in my career. And I was a total blithering idiot. I mean, I could not speak. I was so excited. And I still think he is just a master at plotting. And I read his book on plotting, and I think he's amazing. And the other that stands out that I got to meet, one of the books that I just loved, that when I was trying to move from romance into more mystery and suspense and thriller, I read Eye of the Needle. And Ken Follett, it was such a suspenseful, an irredeemable hero anti-hero for sure. But the sexual tension in that book was superb. And I remember thinking, now, if a writer of the caliber of Ken Follett can do this, then there is a genre there. And so that book really influenced me. And later, when I met him at an International Thriller Writers at a Thriller Fest, I was the same way. I couldn't speak. I was like, just saying, you'll never know the influence that you and your work has had on me. So I would say those writers, definitely. Long answer. Sorry, I get so long-winded.
No. I can't tell you how relieved I am to know that you too were a blithering idiot when you met Dean Koontz. And yet we've become such good friends, and we're going to launch Dean Koontz's new book on October the 6th. So he's turned into a pen pal. And I never would have dreamed of it, because I was just a moron when I met him at a books expo in New York. So thank you, Sandra, for telling me that maybe he's used to absolutely incoherent females.
I'm so relieved to know I'm not the only blithering idiot.
Oh, really well. Well, ladies, this has been absolutely superb. I want to congratulate you, Sandra, on this is your publication date. For Thick as Thieves. So how wonderful that we've gotten to share it with Sandra. If she were here, we'd be like quaffing champagne and other things. But yes, it is. Here we are.
And
Sandra was here last year, and we can hope that she will return in
I will
after.
too.
I really hope so. And for Linda, it's an annual treat to see her in July and to walk with Kate Burkholder through Amish country. I'm totally addicted to her books.
And Thomas Eddy. Don't forget Thomas
Oh,
Eddy.
Yes. Actually, not just Thomas Eddy, but some of the Amish characters too. I really liked in Outsider. I have to say, I really love the father, the widowed father of the children,
Gotcha.
finds himself sheltering this difficult woman with a real big problem who has arrived in Painter's Mill, and I thought he was one of your best Amish characters.
Are we going to see him again, Linda?
I think that could be a possibility. I've got mail on Adam, and could make another cameo.
Good.
Back in
good.
Linda's past, there was an Amish father that was beyond awful, so really evil, and so it's nice to have one that represents the best and the good, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, ladies, and I want to thank all of you who joined us tonight. Please buy a copy of their books, which is a wonderful thing to do. Autographed by both, and tell your friends and listen to the podcast if you missed anything, which will be available starting tomorrow. So good night.
Thank you.
Right.